Hi class, let's chat a little bit about your results section. So the results is a really exciting part of your final research project. This is where you are going to take the data collected from your survey and analyze it. So I'm sure that this sounds really overwhelming because it's a little overwhelming. It's a little scary, but we're going to try and break it down and make it into a manageable assignment. First of all, remember that you're not publishing a paper. You are completing a class assignment. And so our job is to go through and understand the process to produce a research paper or journal article, but we're not necessarily going to have the data to do that. So just keep that in mind. I understand that it's been a while since you've taken statistics. I'm not requesting that you do anything over the top. Just explain the data. So for those of you that use Qualtrics, you'll notice as you log in that there is a reports tab in Qualtrics, and it will show you a lot of information that you need to complete this final report. What you will mainly be reporting is frequency information. Frequency counts, frequency percentage. Decide which one you think is most important. In most cases, the percentage is going to be more impactful. And so you will say, for example, 57% of people said this, and in parentheses next to 57%, you'll put how many that ends up being. If you ended up having a really low response rate, so you received around 30 responses, it will be very important that you put the actual count next to it. Okay. So you're going to go through your frequency counts for the most important variables, the ones that are necessary to answer your research questions. As you noticed with the surveys, I will have your research questions open when I grade the results portion of this assignment. I will make sure that those research questions are answered using the results offered in your document. Please make sure that you also do this so that you are not surprised when your grade comes back low. If your grade comes back low, it will be for several reasons. One, the paper was poorly written, and two, the research questions were not answered. You can do a lot to eliminate points being taken off by making sure those research questions are explicitly answered. If you are worried about it, if you think I may be confused and not be able to find the information, you can feel free to include the research question itself within the text of that results section. You just introduce who answered your survey, and then you can say the information was used to answer the following research questions. Bold, research question number 1. Information related to it in a narrative form. This should make sense. It should flow. It should be a paragraph. Then, once research question 1 is answered, go on to research question number 2. Whatever you can do to make your answer more obvious, please go ahead and do that. Remember that, as I'm sure you did in some of those journal articles, the reader will often skim. So, while I will read your paper thoroughly, you want to write this in a way that future researchers or other students in future semesters are able to quickly look at your paper and read the parts that they are most interested in reading. So that's one of the reasons why you might choose to use a bold title. Okay, so you're going to use those frequencies that you see in Qualtrics. You're also going to look at which variables you can use measures of central tendency for. For example, mean, median, and mode, standard deviation, range. All of those things that we learn in our very introductory statistics class, where they are applicable and you feel help answer the research question, please go ahead and use those in your data analysis. I'm not asking you to do something really complicated, but I want to make sure that you use the tools that you have available to you to answer those research questions. You will need to go just a slight step further and look at some inferential statistics. So we'll look at correlations between variables. In order to answer most of your research questions, you do need to look at those correlations between variables. So think to yourselves, talk about this as a group. Which of these statistics do we need to use? Do you need to use a chi-square? Do you need to use an independent sample t-test? Things like that. We're not going to go into a regression analysis. You're pretty much going to stop with that chi-square and t-test. So look into those and decide what is applicable to your variable. You need to report these statistics, all statistics, in APA format. If you have questions about reporting statistics in APA format, please do a quick search on the internet. The University of Washington has a great source for reporting statistics in APA format, but just look at it. Reporting statistics in APA format, and it should take you to a number of universities that have information on that, and it will show you exactly how that needs to be reported within your narrative. If you choose to include figures or any graphics within your results section, they need to be labeled properly in APA format. This requires that you have something like graphic 1.1, the title of that graphic, all properly APA formatted. Please look on the Purdue OWL if you have questions about that, or a great resource is those journal articles that you read initially as part of the literature review, because those will all be done in APA format. Take a quick look at those and notice that not only is the graphic introduced in the text, but it is also properly titled and labeled and included. If you have a lot of graphics and you find them very interesting and very helpful, but you don't have room for them, you are welcome to add something called an appendix to your research paper. An appendix is an additional section that you can refer to in the text but is not included in your final page count. If you choose to do this, you must introduce the graphic very thoroughly within the text, explain all relevant information, and then in parentheses at the end of that explanation, write see Appendix A, figure whatever, include the figure title. You cannot have a ton of information included in the appendix that you do not refer to at all in the text. Just know that the appendix is an additional section, so the reader is not required to go there to understand your paper. That means anything that you feel is relevant must be included in the narrative of the paper. Also note that while graphics can be very useful, there are times when graphics just take up too much space and don't need to be used. Your final paper has a 6-page limit. Decide how you want to use those 6 pages. You have about 2 pages to use for the results section, and all of the research questions must be thoroughly answered. If you choose to include a table or a chart or something like that, it needs to be a very data-heavy chart or graphic. A pie chart that simply shows the answer for one variable is not going to be enough. It is just going to take up a lot of space and not provide you with the information you need to adequately answer those research questions. However, these pie charts and things like that can be very useful in your final poster, which is an individual assignment and will be submitted on July 25th. So if you choose to create those less data-heavy graphics right now, that's okay. You can save them and use them in that final poster. And you will need some graphics in the final poster. So just keep that in mind. If you do have, for example, a scale that you want to show, oftentimes a chart or table will be very useful for displaying that information because it includes several questions within one chart or table. Just keep that in mind. Again, look to those journal articles for examples of how to structure those charts. One thing to keep in mind, before you launch into the results section, you need to very, 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 very thoroughly explain your population. You need to explain your respondents. So you've explained the population within the method section. If you are doing BYU Idaho students, you have already thoroughly explained what the BYU Idaho student body looks like. Now we need to go through and talk about what your respondents look like, because in the discussion section, you will talk about any differences between your respondents and the population that you hoped to get responses from. And this will become very important in that discussion section, and within that, the limitations section. So include that. You need some basic demographics: percentage of male, female, average age, income, education level, location, things like that. Just build a picture of who answered your survey. Okay, The results section is not a place where you discuss what your results mean. It is where you list your results. You list them within paragraphs. They should be cohesive paragraphs, but you are going, for example, you will say 57% of respondents said this versus what percentage said this. Responses were the same between male and female, include the statistic, things like that. You will not say, this indicates that, or this means that, or we can infer this. Do not say any of that in the results section. This is the time where you will just list out that information in a cohesive paragraph. The discussion section is where we will take it a step beyond simply listing the results, and that is where you will talk about, why does it matter? What does this mean? This is where you will interpret that information. And we want to save it because in order to adequately build up that discussion section, you must provide a thorough explanation in the results section. You also must make sure all those research questions are answered in the results section. And if you start adding some of that discussion piece, you have a tendency to miss some of the important results. So look through. Look at what you have. Decide what you need. Don't make your results section just a listing of the frequency count for every single question on your survey. Not all of your survey questions are going to be applicable at this point in time. Now that you've looked through your survey with your research questions, you may find that maybe you didn't get a lot of answers to one question, or maybe the answers weren't what you thought. Maybe they're just not as important now that you've asked people. Include only the important information in this results section, but very carefully check it against your research questions. Again, it should be about 2 pages. Maybe you might need to go a little bit over at this point, but keep in mind that final paper does have a 6-page limit. If you have any questions about the results, I am happy to provide assistance. Please take the first crack at this yourself. Look at the results within Qualtrics or within Google Forms first, and then move it to Excel and go a step further. Qualtrics will allow you to do not only frequency counts, but also crosstabs, and those crosstabs will become very important. If you chose to go with Google Forms, you will need to use a pivot table to create those crosstabs, but they are still fairly straightforward, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on that. But take a look at the tools currently available to you within these survey platforms. These are pretty powerful platforms themselves. Your analysis just needs to go a little tiny step beyond that, and not with every variable, just the ones specifically mentioned within the research questions. Overall takeaway, overall question, let me address. Get those research questions out. Print them out and go through them step by step as you are writing this results section. Like I said, that's what I will do when I grade it, so I want to make sure that that's what you do now. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Email me. I'm happy to look at it. I'm happy to help you look at your data, but I need to make sure that you have looked at it first and that your group has had a chance to discuss it. So good luck. If your survey is still open, please consider closing them by Friday. Thank you.